Hey guys, welcome back to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today I'm back with the patch 5.2c patch notes, and we're a little bit late on this one. As you can see, it's 18 hours ago, and the patch is already live right now. So anything I cover here is, of course, going to already be live. You guys can jump straight in and experience it. But this is a pretty big patch with a lot of item and rune changes that is going to be very consequential to the game. So it's definitely an important patch to cover. So regardless, let's jump straight into it. So first up, Rengar is getting a rework. The Journey to Mastery is an event that will be, it says that it's going to be released on September 5th at, 12:01 UTC, but it is yet to release. And this is very common for the events that should release when the patch comes out. Generally, it comes out the next day. So I'm not sure if this is a typo error or whatnot, but generally it does take a day for the event to come out, so don't worry too much about that. So first up, Rengar is getting a rework. So what is the rework basically about? Well, first up, his base stats are all getting increased by a little bit. So more AD at base, making his clear faster, more AD per level, more health per level, a little bit more tanky, as well as more armor per level. So his passive is getting a little bit of a change. So the first change is, if Rengar doesn't gain ferocity from the basic attack, at less than 4 ferocity, he will be able to gain 1 ferocity instantly. So previously, he had to have an empty ferocity bar, and then he jumps in, gets 1 stack from his basic attacks, and get the 3 other stacks from his 3 abilities. But now, you could, for example, use some abilities, get some stacks, and then you could jump in later on and then get your stack as your from your basic attack on, let's say, the second, third, or fourth instance instead of only the first. So overall, gives you a lot more flexibility and is a very, very huge change. Furthermore, when you cast any of your empowered abilities, you gain the bonus movement speed. So this bonus movement speed used to be on his W. When you got the heal, you're gonna get the movement speed as well, but now it's on any of his abilities. So this obviously makes it much better, because he's going to be able to either run people down better or run away after he has burst someone down. Then the ferocity will reset 8 seconds after staying out of combat. I believe this is longer than currently, but I'm not fully sure because I haven't seen Rengar in a long time. Obviously, I don't play him. But yeah, so bonus AD gained from taking down a champion. It used to scale exponentially. So it used to go from 1 to 4, then to 9, and 16, and 25. But now it's evenly spread for 8, 12, 16, 20. So the peak is lower, but you also get more at lower levels. Like for example, if you compare, let's say 4 to 8, it's literally double, for example. So something like this. So his Q change is that his first basic attack after casting an ability will always crit. It is, of course, boosted by crit rate up to a maximum of 100%. So IE should be affecting this. So whenever you cast your Q, basically it's going to crit. However, because of that, you're only going to deal 60% damage to turrets. Otherwise, you're going to take down turrets way too quickly. So there is that. And then over here, the base stats are going up by 10 from what it currently is, but the scaling remains the same. So the empowered one basically the base again is going up by 10, the rest remains the same. Now I think the fact that Rengar is getting, they say rework, but let's face the facts, he's basically getting buffed. The passive is a buff here, it's a buff here, it's a buff here as well for the most part, and the crit here is a buff, this is a buff as well, and this is also a buff. So basically Rengar is getting buffed like everywhere. So basically it's a huge buff for Rengar. I do expect Rengar to, number one, of course, we all know he's going to be played a lot, but number two, he's also probably going to be pretty good. So probably I'm going to start banging Rengar personally as an ADC main, but yeah. So next up, W also getting a buff where if the person who's attacking him is a monster, he will be able to restore 100% health equal to the damage he took in the first 2 seconds. So basically, this is going to help you immune basically one auto attack from like the red or blue buff most likely, because 2 seconds is a really short duration. So I think it's probably only going to be 1 attack and not 2. But yeah, of course you don't get the bonus movement speed anymore because of course it's gone to the passive. So now your E, when you hit someone, you will reveal them for 2 seconds, so you will get vision around the target, which also means you can hit them in a bush and you can see them to jump from, let's say, the first bush to the second bush when you're in lane. For example, you can also now use it during the leap, which I think is going to be a bit challenging to execute unless you're shooting it straight and not sideways, because obviously when you're in the leap, you move really quickly and it's really hard to aim the E, but it is not possible. So if you're leaping straight at a target and you launch it in the air, it's going to hit them faster and you're going to burst them even faster. So obviously this is also a buff. Base damage is going up by 10. Bonus AD remains the same. And here, the damage again, the base damage with the ferocity is also going up by 10, and everything else is the same. Now for the ultimate at the early ranks, the cooldown is going down tremendously, and at the later ranks just by a little bit. Movement speed increase is going up by 10% at all ranks, so literally Rengar is getting buffed at every single ability and the passive as well. So if Rengar is not like one of the top junglers after this, I have no idea what to say. Now what I will say is that Rengar is not a very easy champion to play. So I don't think everybody's going to be that good at Rengar immediately, but of course if you just snowball and get like 2-3 kills early, you could come to an instance where basically you just ult and you just jump on someone and you just randomly mash your buttons and you're going to kill them anyway. So I could definitely see that happening. But let's move on to the rest of the changes. So Wukong is getting a little bit of a buff. His health per level is going up by 7, which means that he's going to get a little bit more health by the time you reach higher levels. His Q is getting a base damage buff by quite a sizable amount at higher ranks, and since you max this first, this is actually going to matter. Scaling remains the same, so overall a tiny buff to Wukong. Zyra also getting a small buff. Firstly, her passive, which is the plants, they're going to do a little bit more damage, 5 extra damage at all ranks, and 3% extra AP, so in late game she's going to do a bit more damage. Now of course, there was a point in time in the game where Zyra was really strong, so I do believe that they nerfed her quite a number of times, and that made her, you know, a little bit on the weaker side, although I don't really think she's weak, so they're kind of giving her a little bit of her damage back. In the meantime, on her E, scaling is going up by 10%, so your E is going to do again more damage when you're at later ranks. Now Akshan, yeah, hasn't been doing too well. I kind of agree with that one. So his armor per level going up by 0.4, magic resist by 0.2, so a little bit harder to kill. And his Q is getting a pretty huge buff. Like, you can see that when you skill it, you are going to get more and more damage, and at the highest rank you get 15 extra damage. Ratio remains the same. Damage ratio to minions is actually going up by roughly 5 to 10% per rank. So also of course helps us wave clear. The damage of the crit strike on your E is going up from 125 to 150%, and with IE is going up by a further 30%. So I guess this is kind of encouraging Akshan to build crit and to build IE, because there were at some points a lot of on-hit Akshan builds, but of course also crit is also really popular, and at the last time I checked with Akshan, he was building some really weird stuff like collector first item. I'm really not sure because I don't really play Akshan, and I don't really see Akshan either. But yeah, so next up is Seraphine, who is getting a nerf on her surround sound, which is the W, the shield. So basically the cooldown is going up at the later ranks. So by 1 second, then 2 seconds, then 3 seconds at max rank, and the heal is taking a big hit. So instead of 7.5% plus AP of health loss, it's now 5% only. So that's 2/3. So it's definitely a nerf to support Seraphine and just Seraphine overall. Yeah, I mean, I always knew she was good. I always ranked her pretty high on my support tier lists. Of course, a tier list for this patch are gonna come out sooner or later, and yeah, so unfortunately, she's gonna take a hit here. So Urgot is actually also getting a nerf, but I don't really think he's that big of a problem nowadays. But he's getting a nerf where basically now his base damage of his passive is actually half, from 12 to 6. And then it scales off of 80 the same. That seems to be pretty sizable, especially at the earlier ranks. This definitely is going to hurt him a little bit. But of course, at the later ranks, most of the damage comes from the AD anyway, so it probably wouldn't matter too much. So Viego, of course, we all know is one of the top junglers. That has been for ever since his release. Armor per level going down by 0.5, so going to be a little bit squishier. His Q is also getting a nerf. The passive basic attack, which is the double attack that you deal whenever you hit someone with an ability, the health percentage is going down by 1%. The second strike AD percentage going down by 5%. And the active, which is the stab forward, the damage is actually staying the same, but what really changes here is the crit modifier. So it used to be 1 plus 0.75 times crit rate. Now it's only 0.5 times crit rate, so he scales a lot worse with crit. And as we all know, crit Viego is the most common and most popular Viego build. You one-shot someone, possess their body, and then continue on from there. But yeah, he is taking a sizable hit here. Also on his ulti, where the ult is going up in cooldown in the earlier ranks, And the base damage, again, getting the same crit kind of nerf as the Q. So overall, building crit on Viego is going to feel a lot worse. I do feel that they want Viego to build more bruisery and not crit, so I guess that's the way they're kind of forcing it. Now Kayn, the red form or the darkened form is going to be getting a buff. First up, Kayn is getting just a general base armor increase, but on his darkened form, he is going to charge it faster, so he's going to get more orbs from damaging melee champions. He's also going to get more orbs from killing or assisting in killing them. And the health regen you get in that form is going up by 4% in all ranks. Now the Q in that form is going to deal extra percent health damage. So it used to be 6%, now it's 7%. And his ulti is now going to heal more. Used to be 10% and now it's 12%. So overall, pretty huge buff to Red Kayn. I think Blue Kayn is still the more popular one. And Kayn is actually falling in popularity in the recent patches. So I guess this is going to help him out a little bit. Now, the gameplay changes is where it really gets interesting in terms of the items and runes, as I kind of alluded to at the start. So first up, Moral Reminder and Sorella's Grudge are both getting an increase to max out at 33% armor pen instead of 30%. Now, in my opinion, this is just to keep it in line with Terminus, who gets 11% pen per hit, so that's going to add up to 33%, which basically now this just gives you the same amount as Terminus, which I think is very logical, unless they want to nerf Terminus by 1% per hit, which I think buffing these two items is probably just better. And here is where the big change comes in. I think the biggest change of the patch has to be on Redemption just in general. So Redemption is now no longer an enchant. Instead, it's an actual item. Now, it costs 2600 gold, 400 max HP, 300 mana, and 20 ability haste. Now, it does give you two new passives. The first one is healing allied units within a range of 350 for 50 plus 6% bonus health every 8 seconds. If no one is nearby, of course it will not be triggered. And you will restore mana equal to 15% of the damage you take from champions, and when you consume mana, restore health equal to 20% of the mana consumed. And every cast restores 15 max HP. Now this change is very, very interesting, because my first thought is, obviously this is a healing item for supports. But then you basically realize that the heal scales off of bonus health. And even if you count the 400 bonus health from this item, that's going to give you 74 HP every 8 seconds, and 74 HP is really little, because even if supports rush this as a first item, they're gonna get it around level 6 to 8 kind of range, and by that point your ADC is gonna have about, let's say, 1.2k health. So giving your ADC like 74 health, or giving everyone for that matter 74 health is gonna be not very much at all. Now, even if you build other items that give health, like let's say Imperial Mandate and Iron Sensor, that gives you another 400 plus HP, so that's gonna give you 100 health heal every 8 seconds. That's on your third item when everybody's already gonna be level 15, and they're all gonna have like more than 2k health most likely at this point, so giving 100 health is kind of useless. So then I realized that this is probably not meant to be a enchanter item. Like, it could be, because getting just the health and making yourself more tanky for enchanters is going to be good. Getting mana and getting ability haste is also really good. This passive is also really good for enchanters. It's just that this passive is kind of useless on enchanters, except to proc other items like Staff of Flowing Water and Ardent Sensor. So I still think it's an okay enchanter item, but things get interesting when you consider this as a tank item. So in case you guys forgot, remember when we had Ixtali Seed Jar and it gave 400 HP? Well, it cost, I think, 2500 or so, if I'm not mistaken. This is basically almost the same price. It's like 100 gold more than what I think Ixtali Seed Jar was, so it's 100 more gold than that. But you get the same 400 HP, which is literally all Ixtali Seed Jar did. It just gave you 400 HP, it didn't give you anything else. It gave you that stupid passive where you could pick up plants and no one actually cared about that. But here you get 300 mana, which, yeah, it's not that useful in tanks, but having more mana never hurts. You get 20 ability haste, which is amazing on any champion. Like, no champion wouldn't want ability haste, which is amazing. And then you get the heal on tanks. Now, when you consider that tanks actually build health, this heal is actually going to be a lot more sizable than if a support has it. So for example, imagine if a tank rushes this first item, then builds Heartsteel second, or vice versa. Just that insane amount of HP you get from Heartsteel is already going to instantly give you a pretty, I wouldn't say insane, but it's going to give you a way higher heal than support items. If you get some other health items, like just general tank items that give you health, this heal is actually going to be pretty insane. And then you consider that since tanks now heal everybody, Now tanks can go for some weird builds. Like for example, tanks can maybe spec into an Ardent Sensor last item or a Staff of Flowing Water last item if the situation calls for it, because they can now actually proc it on the entire team. Like imagine if you are let's say you're a Maokai in the jungle, right? You're a tank and you built this item. And let's say you have an ADC. Let's say you have a Tryndamere top and a Yasuo mid. All three people benefit from having attack speed. And let's say you build an Ardent Sensor. You proc your heal every 8 seconds, which is going to trigger your Ardent Sensor every 8 seconds on all three of them. And that's going to be, in my opinion, that's going to be completely insane. So then we take a look at Ardent Sensor, who's also getting a change. Now, this is just a flat out buff for Ardent Sensor. You get 5 less AP, but instead you get double the ability haste, which is going to be a huge buff to enchanters. Just casting more spells more often is insane. And then now, instead of giving both yourself and your ally attack speed, you're instead now going to only give your ally attack speed. So they're gonna get more, from 10 to 30%. Now it's gonna be 15 to 40%, which is a decent amount more. And they're gonna do 20 to 40 bonus magic damage. So that's just a flat out buff to Ardent Sensor. And yeah, these two changes are already pretty insane. And now we get to Shield Bow, which of course is where my interest is going to lie, being an ADC player. So Shield Bow, firstly, is getting a discount of 200 gold. So this is obviously to encourage more people to just build it, because Shield Bow is a very unpopular item ever since it got nerfed. But now it's getting a pretty big change. So it used to scale off of crit. So get 3 extra shield per 1% crit for 5 seconds. So of course, on base, you already have 25% crit, so that's extra 75 shields. So at base, it's actually 375 shield already. And now, instead of that, it's going to scale up for levels. So it's going to give you 250 to 550 damage. Now, I want to point out something very interesting here about the numbers. So if you guys realize, if let's say you built Shield Bow as a first item, you used to get 375 shield. Now, with this 250 to 550 kind of situation, of course you're not going to get it at level 1, so it's not going to be a 250 shield. So the total shield scaling is actually going to be 300, and that means that per level, if you divide it by the levels, you should get about 20 plus kind of shield when you talk about per level. So let's say it's like 20 shield per level. So let's say you get your first item at, let's say, level because you have boots first item, so let's say you get it at level 7. So you are gonna actually get a shield of about 390. So that's basically the same amount as what you used to get when you bought Shield Bow. So now the thing that really changes here is the cap. So last time what you used to get is, of course, 300 plus 3 times crit rate. So if you have 100% crit, which you probably should, you're gonna get a 600 total shield, whereas now you only get a 550 total shield. So this change for actual crit builders who actually want to build Shield Bow as a late item is actually a nerf. So for example, MF, I'm actually going to release an MF guide pretty soon, and I do recommend going Shield Bow as a last item. So for champions like those who want to go for Shield Bow as a last item for a defensive option, this is actually a nerf because you're actually getting less shield total. But where this is an insane buff in is people who build on hit. So for example, imagine Twitch or Callista, they're going to build Bork, Runan's, Terminus, Wit's End maybe, and then you go for a Shield Bow last item just for the defensive capabilities. Now you used to get a 375 shield. Now instead of 375, you can now get a 550 shield. So this is a pretty huge buff for non-crit builders who want to build Shield Bow. Now in fact, it's not really just them that could build a Shield Bow. Of course, if you were a bruiser, you're probably gonna build Starex. But if you're someone who's a little bit more ambiguous, let's say a Tryndamere or something like that, actually Tryndamere would have the one better because he has natural crit in his kit. But you guys get the general idea that if you want a defensive item as an offensive champion, let's say you are playing I honestly I don't know. I can't really think of an example right here right now, but this could work on some of those champions as well. So there are more possibilities at the end of the day. Now Giant Slayer is getting a little bit of a change. So now instead of dealing 14% when the enemies have 700 bonus HP, you're not gonna deal 16% when enemies have 1600 HP. So overall, this basically means it's 1% per every 100 health, instead of 1% for every, I believe it's 50 health, which is of course less efficient. But when you really think about it, this is probably still the best option because coup de grace is just such a weak rune, despite the fact that it's now 9% instead of 8% or 7%. I'm not really even sure, but coup de grace is such a weak rune. And considering how there's a lot of heart steal, a lot of tanks, and you know, you have the new redemption, things like that, Giant Slayer is probably just going to be the best option still. Now, Lethal Tempo is where the huge change, another huge change. I know there are a lot of huge changes, but it's where another huge change comes. So first up, used to be okay, I'm just going to talk about ranged champions just to keep things simple, because if not, I have to talk about melee range, but you used to get 4 to 10% per stack, and then 40% when you reach the maximum amount. Now, you're actually getting 7 to 15%, and instead you're actually getting range when you reach the maximum amount. This is pretty huge, because if you take a look at the attack speed, yes, you are going to get a little bit less at the end of the day. So for example, you used to get 100% extra attack speed when you fully stack Lethal Tempo. Now you're only going to get 90, so you are losing 10% attack speed, but you are going to be getting 75 bonus range. And now I personally see that as a huge win. Although of course you lose 10% attack speed, 75 bonus range is you know, a decent amount. It's not a lot, but it is a really decent amount. So this is going to definitely you know, be a difference maker, whether it be it in lane or in team fights. Getting that extra range is always going to be good. Range is such a valued commodity for ranged champions. I think honestly 50 range on melee champions is a little bit less impactful, because even if you get bonus range from your auto attacks, most of the time you still need to be really close to use the rest of your abilities anyway, so it matters a little bit less. But of course it doesn't matter. For example, if you're chasing someone down, you just need that extra little bit of range. It could matter, and it wouldn't definitely matter in some cases, but definitely on ranged champions is going to mean a lot more. So other than that, system changes. We have the T-Hex mecha, where you have a little bit of a change where now when you auto attack, you can penetrate targets, hit and stuff, only hitting the first target, so you don't suffer from the Graves or Zeri problem anymore, but you do get a damage decay on subsequent targets. You also have a little bit larger hitbox, I'm going to assume, of the basic attack to fit with its giant size. And yeah, so the minimap will now prompt if it's spawned but not activated, because a lot of people ignore the TX. Sometimes I do believe that's for the best. But yeah, it also will prompt when it sets off. So 2 new skins. I believe Elderwood Rakan is a Wild Pass skin. But that is pretty much it for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my breakdown of the patch. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.